Hey everyone, it's the brain in a vat again. No, not a brain in the Vatican. The brain in a vat again. So, welcome back. This is our final episode of the YouTube True Crime Bad Actors series. Or at least, I don't have any more planned at the moment. But who knows? Maybe there will still be more to come, if necessary. So, this has been fairly easy, actually, besides the massive time required to collect and assemble the evidence. Do you have any idea how boring and tedious it is to listen to multi-hour monotonous moron monologues? Sorry to gratuitously slip the word moron in there, but I needed another M word to complete my alliteration. It was equal part nauseating and exhausting. And I'll be really happy to get this last one out of the way so I can move on to other interesting new projects. But I thought it was important to let these frauds and con artists expose themselves almost entirely in their own words. You see, that was the easy part. So as we have hopefully seen together, these bad actors continue to this day to play their dirty and immoral games together, like little children playing cowboys and Indians in their living room fort with flashlights. They continue to damage ongoing missing person cases. They exploit the already victimized. They even create new innocent victims out of thin air that have nothing to do with the cases they pretend to cover, or individuals who are actually trying to help in those same cases. I mean, you would think they should actually be allies with that latter group, don't you think? And they do this all for social and economic gain, for YouTube power and glory. Very cynical. They get their kicks and thrills exploiting the gullible while pretending to care about their loyal flocks. And in return, these cult of personality members, these sheep, feed them an endless supply of praise, donations, and super chats, believing them to be saviors of lost children, noble people with high moral standards, virtuous leaders fighting in this epic battle of good versus evil. And maybe the most interesting part of this group psychology, this cognitive pathology, is that the more money and praise that people give them only seems to increase the likelihood that they will never accept any evidence which contradicts them. Because it seems that it is easier to fool people than it is for those once fooled to admit that they were fooled in the first place. It's an interesting paradox. It's a sort of sunken cost fallacy, whereby it would be a shame, as well as rather embarrassing, to have to shed an asset or a belief that you've already invested so much in already. So just double down on them. They certainly will be doubling down and even tripling down. You can count on that. So give them more of your money and praise. Reinforce this bad acting. That will certainly result in more ethical YouTubers jumping into the vacuum and better, more responsible behavior. These bad actors also all apply the same tactics. Once you learn to recognize them, you see them everywhere. It's just a simple monkey see, monkey do phenomenon. What's good for the goose must be good for the gander, right? After all, it worked for that YouTuber, and look how well they've done for themselves. They must be doing something right. I'll emulate them and copy their approach and ethics, or lack thereof. Because damn the ethics. Who cares about integrity or honesty, being responsible, or doing the right thing, right? Get your piece of the pie. It's a dog-eat-dog world, right? I mean, if I won't do it, someone else will. And then there are the sycophants, the ones that kiss up, hoping to ride on the coattails of others, up the ladder of YouTube success. And we've already watched the mental gymnastics and the contortion act they're willing to perform, the relativism, the logical fallacies, the horrific moral reasoning. It's the perfect case study for critical thinking and moral philosophy. So I simply couldn't resist. These are your YouTube true crime bad actors, stripped down in all of their glory for all of you to behold. So let's get this story started, shall we? It seems only fitting that we finish up with our beloved Phish McDonish in his familiar King Troll costume. So, who did he victimize this time? Was it one of the family members in an ongoing case? Or is it another innocent victim, not even involved in his investigations? This is the story of AKRox and what the mean Mr. Phish was willing to fabricate to defame him and put another innocent individual and his family in danger again, just like he did in the case of Jamie Wilson and Nomadic Trek. And similar to the case of Nomadic Trek, this one again was also intentional and not accidental. So let's let Phish get us started and pay attention to the ego, the bravado, the self-aggrandizement. And listen how Linda giggles in the background in total deference and awe of the retired lawman, not recognizing for one moment that she was hosting a bad actor who would use her platform to defame an innocent man. You're a mean one, Mr. Phish. Your mouth's a lying hole. Da-na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na-na. Na-na-na-na-na-na.
Okay, so I'm putting the world on notice right now, okay?
You're putting the world on notice, huh, fella? Sorry, who do you think you are again? Oh, right, sorry, 187 McDonough, the concatenation of your name with the penal code for murder or kill.
Behind those links that this guy has are child pornographic sites.
That's a lie, and I'll explain that a bit later.
Why Chris is full of shit.
Okay. And, nobody has ever said to them, knock it off. Okay. And because they're not used to, folks like this foundation and others, okay?
You're not a foundation, Mr. Ex-Schuper-Cop. You did this yourself as a mere civilian.
By the way, I know his shoe size. He doesn't think I do, but trust me, I even know the 6 backup websites you have. Now, that should get his attention right there. You have 6 of them. Okay? And so, and if you think I'm playing, then you keep moving. Okay? So I'm not playing because this is real life. We're talking about a 5-year-old little girl here.
A 5-year-old girl, huh? I appreciate your appeal to emotion fallacy right there. Your beef with AK had nothing to do with the Summer Wells case. It goes all the way back to some interpersonal issue you had with him when he was organizing and participating in searches in the Morphew case. My best guess is that your ego didn't like anyone else getting any credit for helping on that case, and there was only room for one superhero. I seem to remember that you had an overhyped and failed brief hang-up call with Barry, which you marketed as some big exclusive interview for your show, no? AK actually interviewed him for 45 minutes, but without all the pomp and hype like yours. Did that have anything to do with it? Are you still angry about the dog, too? Are these people threats to you? Are you afraid that they might steal your thunder?
Okay, I don't have time for little trolls, around the corner. Okay? In fact, I hunt trolls for a living. So you're not even a challenge.
You see, it's this obsession right here with trolls that always gets you in trouble, old man. This is the modern age. We all learn to deal with regular disagreements on social media. It's annoying, but usually a simple fuck off or screw you, asshole, and it's usually out of the system of normal, stable people. You, on the other hand, seem to blow your top. You dox cops.
To try to DOS cops.
Sorry, you DOS cops. You accuse people of child pornography and make yourself look like a deranged, unstable narcissist who can't accept anyone disagreeing with or not worshiping you for the ex-super cop of your imagination.
And you know who you are, and I'm being very serious tonight with this guy, because it's going to stop. And if it doesn't stop, they're going to ring your doorbell. I promise you. I promise you. If anybody wants to troll me, okay, I'm not like these other guys that just sit around and eat popcorn. Okay, I'm serious. Right?
Sorry, yeah, you're right. You're not. I'm the one who gets the info snack.
And more cop threats from the tough guy that can't resolve his simple social media disagreements like a man and has to resort to petty and hollow threats and constantly refer to his resources and his cold case foundation and his cop buddies. Somebody's going to come knocking on your doorbell if you don't agree with him. You know, I really do think you probably should just sit at home and eat popcorn and then have a sandwich.
I haven't named this guy's name, okay? I know how old he is. I know he lives in Arvada, okay? I know his address. I know everything about him. But I don't go out and put it out there.
He put it out.
This is also a lie, and I'll prove that to you as well later.
Why Chris is full of shit.
And when I go back, so on some other places and others, because I've got other folks, okay, I have resources, as they say. Okay?
So, as we showed in our last video, when he refers to his resources, he has people, resources, what he is implying is that he has access to top secret intelligence and high-tech skills at his disposal. This, too, believe it or not, is also a lie, and I'll demonstrate that as well.
Why Chris is full of shit.
He only has a keyboard and internet access, just like us mere mortals. Those are his resources.
What these guys forget is I have trained internet crimes against children detectives. I have trained them.
So, as for all of this boasting about training cops, what do you train them, McDonough? The art of doxing innocent people? Sending mobs of people to their homes? How to use cop resources to frame and terrorize people? I hope you don't train them to accuse people of child pornography and murder whenever they have a social media disagreement. Do you teach them how to hunt trolls for a living? Now, you claim to have trained cops on internet crimes against children. You know, you probably should have called your ex-students, because after you provided your fraudulent defamation claims against AK, they'd have laughed at your so-called evidence and all pointed and ridiculed you as the old cop who has lost his step, or possibly his mind.
And you're going to do it to me? Go for it. Okay? Because I know what your IP address is already. Okay? Before it even leaves your keyboard. Okay? So keep it up. Okay? And I know all your little minions. Okay? Keep coming. Come to the honeypot. Okay? Because while I'm working, summer, okay,
Yes.
I'll bring other people to the light. Okay? And I'll do a whole show on you with James. So I just take their identity all day long. Okay? And then have a sandwich.
He's a great person.
You take people's identity, do you? Wow, that's very telling of who you think you are.
Okay? I will. And
I don't doubt it. I don't.
and
doubt
all
it.
I have to do is
Just
put
not
their
about
IP
that.
all I have to do is show their IP addresses. I don't even have to use their names. Okay, that's the easy one.
Linda, please stop giggling like a schoolgirl. You're making a fool out of yourself here. And this IP thing, wow, you have someone's IP address. Because what? The cold case has a website? Or because you had a Discord server? You always make this threat as if it means anything. I have a website too. I've had several actually. And my web server logs every IP address as well. Having an IP means nothing. Unless you're a very accomplished hacker, and you're clearly not, plus that would be quite illegal, if you want to get the identity of someone behind an IP address, you'd need to go to the authorities, ex-cop, and try to convince actual cops to get a warrant, to require an ISP to reveal the identity of the person. And you'd need probable cause. Do you remember that thing? Not an anonymous blog or a tweet on the internet.
Okay. And so, this is great. I used to love, one time I had my name spray painted in a Vadio and, where I used to work. 187 McDonough. Okay. That means, kill McDonough that's the penal code section in California. 187 McDonough. So we said, okay, let's get the team. And we hit that neighborhood probably for about 2 weeks. If you as much as, spit, okay, we had probable cause to FIU, okay. It got so bad, okay, for the crooks, okay, that they painted over it. Not us, not the PD. The bad guy says, there's too many cops here. There's too many cops here. What these guys forget is Cooper right now just got back from something. He's leaving Sunday to go train. Here's a hint, guys, okay? Cops in Dallas, okay? So I'm just going to let you into a little game here, okay? I'm not just on YouTube, okay? We actually train law enforcement, okay? And if you didn't get the video where you see us in North Dakota training the Homicide Task Force for the first ever Native American, assembled task force, that should be a hint, okay, that we're standing in front of the class, not in the class. Okay. So keep it up, because I am looking forward to playing.
Your constant boasting, it's so unattractive and nauseating. How anyone finds that compelling, and not simply the ravings of an egomaniac and a very insecure man, is completely beyond me.
I think what YouTube has confirmed for me, and there's a big study in Psychology Today about, sociopaths behind the keyboard and psychopaths behind the keyboard.
Sociopaths and psychopaths behind the keyboard. I think I'll address that one a bit later, too. I'd like to take my time on that.
But there are other people on YouTube that are going after really good people that don't deserve it.
People on YouTube going after good people who don't deserve it. Gosh, that sounds so, I don't know, there's something eerily familiar to me here. It's almost like, indeed, perfect psychological projection. You are the bad person going after innocent people who don't deserve it. McDonough, Jamie Wilson, Nomadic Trek, and now AK, and all in quick succession. You've been very productive this year, and I would really hate to know how many there have been over your 40-year rodeo.
They're afraid that these people, they're putting their family information on out in the public, and this, their kids and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, who does that and why?
You refer to people being afraid that that people are putting family information out in the public and there are kids involved. And you ask, who would do that? Who does that? And why? Well, you do that, Phish. You're the person who does that. You're consistent and constant, reckless and irresponsible behavior has terrorized 3 families, all with kids, with IRL consequences. That's in real life, old man. You didn't just play on the internet. You fucked with people in the real world, and you terrorized them. To this day, they still look over their shoulders because of what you have wrought, and you can't even muster up a simple apology to any of them.
Why Chris is full of shit.
Yeah.
Oops.
Right.
You're a horrible person. You're no savior of lost children. You haven't even found any lost children, but you've terrorized many. You were even held responsible for having psychologically tortured 3 young boys in the Michael Crowe case, which you continue to lie about to this day, even putting silly little Dougie, your servant boy, up to lie about it and read out-of-date legal documents when the boy can't even read. That's mean. Didn't you say it's not okay to be mean? You're a mean one, Mr. Phish. As for why you do it, well, I suppose that's up for debate. But I think it might have something to do with the personality traits that you referred to in your last show, which I said I think before I'd like to take a little bit more time on later. And this I have resources thing. I know your resources. I've seen your resources in action in the Nomadic Trek case and now in the AK case. Your resources in the Nomadic Trek case were 3 screenshots of web pages, of which one was fabricated, and someone took a picture from a phone. It wasn't even a digital footprint. What are you, born in, are you still living in the 1940s or something like that? Where's your automatic Kodak camera from the 70s? This is the computer age. It's probably a bit too late for you to join it, though. And in the case of AK, your resources here, I found your tracks. I know exactly what you found and where you found it. And it was the result of some Twitter searches and typing someone's name on Google and following the second link you found, and then allowing your confirmation bias to find the first negative piece of information you could find, and then ran with it like a boss. You thought you had found your dirt, and you didn't have even a moment of hesitation to actually think critically or to try to evaluate what you were looking at. But maybe you thought about that, and you simply chose not to, because you found exactly what you were looking for. You wanted dirt on someone for no other reason than you had some petty little interpersonal problem on social media. And you had the gall, the disgusting instinct to accuse an innocent person of having child pornography. What is wrong with you? This is not normal. When people get angry with each other on social media, they say, fuck off, screw you. They block them. They don't accuse them of child pornography in public in front of 100,000 devoted, frothing at the mouth cult members. What you've done is despicable, and you can't own it. You refuse to take any responsibility. 3 cases in a row. This is deranged behavior. This is a disgrace to law enforcement. Your entire credibility is based on this alleged 40-year amazing law enforcement career and all of the knowledge that you've acquired. Nothing that you have done conforms with law enforcement ethics, because heaven forbid it did, because then every cop on the force would be as dirty as you are. It's frightening what you've gotten away with. And I think a lot more people need to make noise so that you get entirely discredited. And I completely agree with the other critics who say your entire prior record should be opened up and analyzed in detail with a fine-tooth comb, with a magnifying glass. There is no way that you became a despicable asshole simply after retiring. You must always have been a despicable asshole. And as an investigator with a presumption of guilt, who did you frame? Who did you put in jail unfairly? What else have you fabricated in the last 40 years? I'm a nobody, and I've been able to expose you as a fraud easily with a keyboard. What did you do when you actually did have resources, and you had a badge, and you had a gun, and you could call on your active police buddies? It frightens me to think about this. So let's move on to the evidence.
Why Chris is full of shit. And yet now he's doing the exact same thing to somebody else on Twitter is fucked up.
So let's take a look now at those tweets, the actual evidence, the defamation. Oh, look, here is your fraudulent death threat, which I showed earlier. You named yourself Murder Chris, not this person. That is what 187 McDonough means. You said it yourself. Kill Chris. Oh, look, here is where you lied about Benny being responsible for your channel being brought down, which we also exposed in prior videos. You got trolled hard again, and you couldn't take it and had to scapegoat him and post his mugshot. You even fell for his trolling here about your Twitter account. How deplorable and, well, derpy. So what did your cat tell you to do when someone bothers you, McDonough? Did the cat tell you to dox 3 innocent men and terrorize their families? accused them of murder and child porn. You probably blamed your cat for getting banned on YouTube. And now we begin with your defamation of AK. One little Tweety bird. And look at that. You even retweeted it for emphasis all the way back in August. Remember on Linda's show where you said you knew his shoe size, his IP, his name and address? But you don't put it out there, right? Well, looky here. You did put it out there. See, I'm not like you, so all of the tweets will be shown without your bogus links and the names you shared. AK's family has been terrorized enough by you. This is just one of the tweets where you typed his entire name and announced him as AK. So, caught in another lie, old fella. You sure do put it out there, and you're even proud of it as you announce it. Now, the innocent person you referred to on Linda's show, with 200,000 followers and your 100,000 followers, know who you accused of having child pornography on his website. Defamation 101. We'll talk about your alleged evidence shortly. Suffice it to say now, it was not his website, and you didn't understand what that website even was. Too little Tweety. Aw, Chrissy is struggling with a dilemma, and he's so troubled by it. He even copies the FBI. Checkmate, AK. 3-letter agencies will soon be knocking on your doorbell. Three little Tweety. Again with your strange cowboy hashtags, claiming that someone has been sloppy. But the super sleuth is on the job, and his high-tech resources and intel have discovered a bunch of old Twitter handles, and he thinks they all lead to AK. Pro tip, they don't. But again, he types out AK's actual full name and doxes him in public to his cult. Poor little Tweety. Again, the sly super cop has found the clues, and which lead directly to AK, and he taunts him and baits him, as Joshin would say, to play with the old fella. Only they don't, again, and again he types out AK's full name and doxes him. 5 little Tweety. Here, old Phish mocks the upcoming defamation suit that hopefully he will shortly be served with, and he adds some more defamation by accusing AK of fraud. AK appears a bit incredulous in his response, and someone sane comes to reassure him not to worry about the old lunatic narcissist. And again, Phish types out AK's full name. And finally, Tweety number 6. This is my favorite by far because of the juxtaposition of him defaming 2 people at once in succession, 2 of his innocent victims. AK, whose name is spelled again, and again always copied to the FBI, and the Nomadic Trek fraud tweet, which is sent off to big-name true crime channels and even CNN breaking news. Have they called yet, Phish, for your big interview? You really thought that was going to go viral, didn't you? Sort of reminds me of Doug and AV's fraudulent Antelope Valley claim that resulted in them both getting arrested for felony threats. You were quite busy and obsessed by these evil trolls, McDonough. Did the FBI ever get back to you? Maybe they contacted your cat. Did the FBI ever call you back about Nomadic Trek? Or about the false accusation that AK had committed fraud? That he had a website and 6 backup servers with child pornography? No? That's probably because you lied about each and every one of those claims, and they knew it. So, how do we know? Well, take it, QT. Logic 101. It never would have been made public. And if you had any evidence on AK, I imagine he might be in jail. And yet, he's still not. He never even got a call. No cop even contacted him or asked any questions. Why is that, do you suppose, ex-Super Cop? Do they know you're demented? Delusional? A con artist? And I love Nomadic's dry wit with that meme, just like his other one about, what was it, old farts sitting on a park bench making stuff up and musing about miserable lives? He's right in this one too, you know. Him giving you his agency ID could have led to someone revealing his prior arrests and sending criminals after him too, in addition to your cult mob. I still love the irony of you dossing yourself, dossing an ex-cop. It's a perfect cherry on top of this story. Cherry 2.0, anyone? That your loyal Cold Case Foundation is willing to overlook your egregious behavior and still back you suggests that they are likely corrupt as well, or at least willing to provide cover for you. Cooper participated in your tea leaf reading, which led to the Nomadic Trek doxing and real-life death threats and threatening packages sent to his home. That he is still on your show demonstrates his complicity. How many of the others on your panel the other night know and are willing to look the other way? I'm guessing it's more than just Cooper. And before I explain this fraud in more detail, let's look at 2 more crucial pieces of evidence. In this post, I can't say I really follow, but apparently you are accusing AK of being in love with an arguably deceased crime victim. The woman that AK and his crew were looking for, and that you were desperately attempting to take credit for. He's what, a delusional stalker? I wonder how you would even attempt to prove this one. I think this is more projection. I think you were probably the dirty old geezer checking out Suzanne's photos. I think this is also good evidence of a deranged mind. But this is the one that should resonate with everyone the most. This is the most tragic. This is the one that makes me the saddest and the most angry. This is what Chris McDonough did and is still doing to another innocent family, the 3rd family in only a couple months. I'll just let you read it, because my commentary would only weaken its saliency. So I'll shut up for a bit and allow you to do just that. This is the story of how Chris McDonough defamed another innocent man. He's the 3rd in our series, but the 1st, chronologically speaking. So those short clips I played for you earlier are from a show on It's a Crime in early August of this year. In that show, Linda unwittingly gave Chris McDonough a platform to rant and whine about internet trolls, like an unhinged and immature 12-year-old who gets cranky and pouty about social media criticism and mean people. But far more importantly, McDonough used that platform to defame an innocent individual, AKRox, and accuse him of having a website with, and therefore promoting and distributing, child pornography. But he did not reveal AK's identity on that show. He did that on Twitter. To Linda's credit, she deleted that video, but I do find it rather conspicuous that she never called it out publicly, that she never called out McDonough personally for what he did on her show, or has had any public comment that I'm aware of on his other irresponsible behavior, so in this and other cases. But if I'm wrong, I would gladly retract that claim. As we have mentioned in earlier videos, it seems a glaring lack of courage that very few large true crime content creators have called out McDonough, most notably those who are openly giddy and seemingly excited to have him on their shows, in an effort likely to add some law enforcement cred to their channels, and in hopes of picking up maybe some new subs, maybe even some of his loyal sycophants and cult members. And on all of these shows, there were lots of softballs thrown at Chrissy. Chrissy loves those softballs. So yes, I'm talking to Unmasked, Web Sleuths, No Thanks Investigates, The Lab, and Tiffany Marie, the three channels that hosted him the night that his page was terminated from YouTube for serious and repeated bullying, harassment, and threats. And these latter three really are in their own class. And that class, of course, is called the Clown Posse. Because you see, if you truly want to defame someone, there really aren't many more effective methods than accusing someone of being a murderer, an SA perpetrator, or possibly even worse, harming or exploiting children. So it's no surprise, really, that these same methods were used in the defamation of Nomadic Trek, and even Jamie Wilson. And these same defamatory techniques, as I've already shown in prior videos, are used by the rest of the Clown Posse as well, in both the West and Summerwell's cases, and always in the absence of actual and legitimate evidence. So it's no surprise, given McDonough's incessant implied accusations against Don Wells, his constant references to SA, abducted children, and even child trafficking on his show, including the unvetted Operation Underground Railroad org that I referred to in a prior video, that Jamie Wilson was also accused of these things by the dangerous mob that terrorized him and his family. So despite Tiffany's efforts to completely distance Chris from having made those accusations, it's not a stretch to understand why it is that Chris's mob would also accuse him of that. None of this is by accident. McDonough knows that much of his base are evangelical end-time prophecy believers. He knows how high the subscription of that demographic is in relation to the QAnon cult as well. He understands the revulsion that people have to the harm of children and abuse against women. Demagoguery, or the use of fear-mongering, is a common rhetorical tactic, and these strong appeal to emotion fallacies are popular with con artists of all flavors. It is a perfect example of the blatant exploitation of actual victims of these horrible crimes used for selfish ends. These are all common ploys and gambits in the McDonish and Clown Posse playbook, and plenty of other YouTube true crime channels play by these same immoral rules as well. So what did McDonough say exactly in those clips again that I played earlier? Behind those links that this guy has are child pornographic sites. I even know the 6 backup websites you have. I know his shoe size, his minions, his city, and his address. I know everything about him, he boasts. And then a bunch of hot air and hollow threats about 3-letter agencies knocking on your doorbell. His usual braggadocious demeanor about a long history of putting bracelets on people, the long arm of his cold case foundation, and his access to super-duper intel and high-tech resources. So let's quickly dispel all of these dangerous and slanderous lies, shall we? I spent the better part of 2 days trying to unravel these claims and to find this alleged evidence that McDonough referred to. But I went a lot further than he ever did. His analysis and investigation likely took, I'd say, less than an hour maybe. And it would not surprise me one bit if he did none of it himself. I had to try to figure out a previously unknown subculture, a complex web of Twitter and internet players, and decipher a lexicon that I was not familiar with. And more importantly, I had to try to figure out who the tribes were here and what their different interests were. And after a lot of digging and cross-checking, and with the help of Aussie Insider providing some basic public OSINT people search queries to identify some of the players, the clouds finally separated, and I was able to solve the riddle fairly quickly. It turns out a few years back, in 2017, there was a lot of back and forth on the internet and Twitter between 2 or 3 different communities. In the simplest of terms, 2 of these groups were essentially the bad guys, if you want, and one of these groups essentially the good guys. The good group were people who go after those who spread smut, gore, bestiality, and child pornography imagery on social media and the internet, even the dark web. They collect information, work with Twitter, Facebook, and law enforcement authorities, even ISPs directly, in foreign countries, and try to take down these accounts and websites so that the civilized world is not traumatized by illegal and disgusting content on major social media sites, so that children, animals, and other victims are not exploited by dangerous trolls and criminals. And yes, there are even sophisticated hackers who do this sort of thing, who take down child pornography and bestiality sites in foreign countries on ISPs who refuse to remove the content on their own because they're not subject to anti-child pornography and bestiality laws like we are. The bad groups are not only those I just mentioned, but another one that I was not aware even existed. A group of what I will call Bitcoin extorters. I had no idea until now that there are opportunists who actually profit from this smut. They are not the depraved content providers, though. They have cleverly created a little cottage industry where instead of reporting the smut peddlers, they extort from them for profit. And apparently, it's big bucks. I saw some of the numbers that they're getting for this extortion. They go directly to the smut providers and blackmail them with threats of revealing their identities and or removing their lucrative content unless untraceable Bitcoin transactions and payments are made directly to them. These are the fake anons that were the targets of the good guys and that McDonough refers to in his tweets. But all of the details, the links, and the defamation against AK will be all blacked out. He and his family have been traumatized enough, and I will not risk exposing them to any more. So I found all of the tracks that McDonough followed, and I took them a lot further. His tracks ended after a few clicks on Twitter and Google. These are his resources. That was the extent of his research, his super sleuth investigation. His confirmation bias was quickly satiated once he found something negative, possibly linked to AK. I found AK as well, the real AK. It was not hard to confirm, and I found the defamatory content against him. I also was able to quickly debunk it all and figure out who the defamatory actors were that McDonough used to slander and libel AK. And guess what? They were the fake anons, these Bitcoin extorters, those who take money from smut peddlers in distant countries and hide behind dozens of anonymous puppet accounts and websites in both the standard and dark web. You see, they don't much like honest people messing with their little extortion racket and post libelous and false claims against those who try to shut them down. Those false claims are made on generic complaint sites on the internet that require nothing but a fake account, require no evidence, and are really nothing more than blogs. You and I can both go on these types of websites right now, create a simple account, and make up conspiracy theories and bald accusations against anyone. We could do the same thing. We could defame McDonough via puppet accounts and accuse him of anything. Then we could share the page on social media, and similar gullible people like McDonough's mob would accept without any skepticism or even basic fact-checking. But you see, again, we would never do anything like that because our conscience simply wouldn't permit that. That's despicable and uncivilized behavior, worthy of petty criminals, con artists, and our caveman. We wouldn't do it, but the likes of Chris McDonough, the alleged ex-super cop, he would, and he did. How ironic that the savior of missing children, either unwittingly or possibly consciously, sided with Bitcoin extorters of smut peddlers. He chose their side. He believed them. This is who we're dealing with, folks. He was willing to defame in public, in front of his cult mob, an innocent person with a wife and child, based on nothing but anonymous bloggers with nefarious interests and behavior. You would think that McDonough would have lauded AK for having worked with authorities and who helped bring down hundreds of false accounts, smut peddlers, and depraved websites with illegal content. That is the defamation story of AK and the lies perpetrated by the founder of the popular YouTube true crime channel, The Interview Room. And this is the man who is flanked and promoted by a host of dregs, of clown posse sycophants, who defend him in order to gain his loyalty and his tens of thousands of loyal followers. Once I had solved this riddle, I needed to privately interview AK in order to confirm certain things. As a skeptic, I tried to be as objective as possible and, hopefully, like a good investigator, asked him questions which I already knew the answers to. If you know AK, and I've gotten to know him a bit, he's painfully honest and quite forthcoming with information. He doesn't really hide very much. Anyone who has followed and knows him already knows that. He wears his feelings openly on his sleeve and shares liberally what he thinks, what he knows, and what he doesn't know. And he is humble. While I went into this story not knowing AK, I came out of it having nothing but respect for him. I don't think it is any surprise that the three people that I've covered who were publicly defamed by Chris McDonough, Nomadic Trek, Jamie Wilson, and AKRox, are all good, honest, and moral people. He not only chose innocent people, he chose good people, and all for his personal gain, with absolutely no remorse or regret. Who does that? And why? If I might steal a quote from Chris McDonough himself. And by the way, I didn't need to do any of this. We can already know that none of these people did any of the things that McDonough said. We don't need any evidence. We need only, in the words of perplexed QT, logic 101. We need only apply the principle of presumption of innocence and the burden of proof, a central foundational principle in our modern justice system. We need only notice that McDonough made these claims in public, which he would not have done had he been a legitimate law enforcement professional or even a moral human being. People do not need to prove a negative or to prove their innocence. The burden is squarely and entirely on the claimant. Have you noticed that AK, McDonough's first defamation victim, Jamie Wilson, and Nomadic Trek are all still tweeting and walking free? How is that? Where are the three-letter agencies knocking on doorbells? Why aren't they all wearing McDonough's bracelets and sweeping up prison cell floors right now? Because Chris McDonough is a liar, nothing more. He's a liar and he's a con artist. And I think the evidence speaks clearly for itself. And just like in the case of Nomadic Trek and Jamie Wilson, what did AKRox, this horrible troll, demand? To simply forgive for this egregious and false accusation? He asked you for one rock, one rainbow, and one apology. And you made a mockery out of that comment in this particular live stream because you didn't understand the spirit, the love, and the kindness behind that gesture and the meaning of that phrase. So, where are we now? We played your own words, McDonough, and we provided a long laundry list of evidence. You said, and I quote, "I know more about you than you think." Actually, I think I know more about you than you think. And now, more of us will too. Checkmate, mate. And one last thing. It is alleged that you or your resources hacked into the Google Cloud, apparently. That is an illegal and criminal act as far as I'm aware of. Now, I myself have not seen the evidence, so I cannot formally corroborate the claim. But after what I've seen thus far, I have little reason to doubt it. Naughty, naughty, Phish. Keep it up, and you might find yourself in bracelets. So keep playing. All of the evidence I've collected thus far seems to point to a rather clear pattern. What is that saying you like again? Prior behavior is the best predictor of future behavior, right? I'm the scientific skeptic, and I'm your huckleberry. In the next episode, I will try to explain who would do this sort of thing and why, the questions that McDonough himself asked. So, join us the next time for our analysis of the interview room, the PR show from the other night, the performance art that you all performed, and I'll try to answer the question and explain why you all played those particular parts. À tout à l'heure, mes amis.
He's a great person.